The first thing you need to understand is this. Your plan for the first 24 hours is probably wrong. It's based on movies, and movies are a lie. I'm not here to reassure you. I'm here to show you what a real, unscheduled nuclear detonation over a normal city would look like minute by minute. Not a war movie, not a political thriller. Just mechanics. Concrete, irreversible mechanics. By the end of this, you will understand the single decision point that determines whether you see Hour 25 or not. Let's start with the only fact that matters in Part 1. The sirens never go off. If you're waiting for that long, rising wail, you're already dead. You just don't know it yet. In a real strategic attack, the warning is the event. There is no 10-minute countdown, no time to grab your bug-out bag and call your family. The first public notification for 90% of the city will be the light. That's our hook. The irreversible point of Part 1. It's a flash, but not like a camera or lightning. It's a light that comes from everywhere at once, filling every window, every crack in the blinds. It's so bright it feels solid. It doesn't flicker. It just exists for about 1.5 seconds. If you are looking in roughly the right direction, and you don't even have to have a direct line of sight, this light will permanently burn its image onto your retinas. You'll see it for the rest of your life, which at this point might be measured in minutes. This is where the first comforting illusion dies. The illusion of warning. You are at home, maybe making coffee. Or you're in your car, stuck in morning traffic on the highway overpass. Or you're asleep. Your brain, confused by the absolute silence and the impossible light, has about 1 second to process. It might register it as a weird electrical transformer explosion, a freak sunbeam. That mental delay is fatal, because while your eyes are seared and your brain is stuttering, physics is already moving to the next stage. That light is thermal radiation. It's heat. A focused, directed heat that travels at the speed of light from the fireball. On the surface of your skin, it feels like a sudden, intense sunburn. Then, in the next half second, it doesn't feel like sunburn anymore. If you're within a certain radius, and for a modern strategic warhead, that radius is vast, exposed skin is now cooking. Synthetics in your clothing melt onto you. Curtains ignite. The paint on cars bubbles. The dry leaves on the trees in your yard burst into flame. This isn't fire spreading. This is spontaneous ignition. Everywhere the light touches, simultaneously. And then, the light vanishes. You're left in sudden comparative darkness, your vision full of purple-green afterimages. Your skin is screaming, and for about 2 to 4 seconds there is silence again. A brief, terrifying pause. This pause is the last normal moment. The last moment where the old rules of your city still seem to apply. It feels like maybe, just maybe, it's over. A bizarre accident. That feeling is the second illusion, and it shatters with the sound. Next, this gets worse because the sound arrives, and it's not what you expect either. The sound arrives, and it's not a boom. It's a crack. A sharp, skull-splitting thunderclap that happens inside your head. It's the shockwave's leading edge, the overpressure front, hitting you. This is the irreversible point for Part 2. The moment the atmosphere becomes a weapon. If you've ever been too close to a lightning strike, multiply that feeling by 1,000. It's a physical punch from the air itself. Your ears pop painfully, then likely rupture. You feel it in your chest, a concussive thump that staggers you. For anyone within several miles of ground zero, this is where most people die. Not from heat, from pressure. The overpressure wave is an invisible wall, moving outward faster than the speed of sound. It doesn't blow things over, it replaces them. One moment there's a house, a brick wall, an office building facade. The next moment, that structure is simply not there. It's not collapsing. It's being disintegrated and pushed outward in a cloud of pulverized debris. The shockwave you see in movies is the debris cloud chasing the pressure front. The pressure itself is invisible and instant. Here's a concrete failure example involving an ordinary person. Think of someone in a ground-floor apartment, away from the windows, thinking they're safe from the initial flash. They hear the crack, and the entire wall facing the blast, the one with the couch, the TV, the bookshelf, simply vanishes. Not falls down, vanishes. The person is now sitting in a room that's suddenly open to the world, and then the suction phase begins. Because a shockwave isn't just a push, it's a push-pull. After the overpressure passes, it leaves a temporary vacuum behind it. The air rushes back in towards the center of the blast with hurricane force. This is where things get truly chaotic. Now, all the debris, the bricks, glass, cars, pieces of furniture, trees, that was just blown outward gets sucked back in. It's not an explosion followed by stillness. It's an explosion followed by a reverse explosion. If you're in a car on that overpass, the windows are already gone from the overpressure. The flash may have fused the windshield into a weird, opaque sheet. Then the suction grabs your 2-ton vehicle and treats it like a leaf. It's lifted, rolled, and thrown into the tangle of other vehicles being pulled in the same direction. Your metal cage is now a blender. This is the moment most people misunderstand. They think surviving the initial flash means they've cleared the first hurdle. They haven't. The shockwave and its aftermath turn the entire cityscape into a projectile blender for a full 15-20 seconds. If the flash didn't kill you, and the overpressure didn't crush your lungs or cause a fatal cerebral hemorrhage, the flying debris and the push-pull cycle will find you. And then, as the roar of the wind subsides, you'll hear a new sound. The sound of things falling. A rain of dirt, concrete, metal, and glass. It's a steady, grinding patter. And underneath that, the first screams. Not many, not yet. Most people in the severe damage zone are dead or in traumatic shock. The screams come from the edges, from people who were just far enough to be maimed instead of killed outright. Your city, at this point, is no longer a city. It's a smoking, dust-choked ruin out to a radius you wouldn't believe. The geometry of streets is gone, buried under rubble. Landmarks are flattened. The infrastructure, the water pipes, gas lines, electrical conduits, are shredded. But this is just the opening act, because we're only about 30 seconds into the first minute, and the fireball is now rising. Next, this gets worse because the real fire begins, and it doesn't spread like a normal fire. It forms. The fireball rises. From the ground, if you could see it through the dust and the ruined buildings, it looks like a new miniature sun, dirty orange and red, boiling with black smoke, lifting off the earth. As it rises, it cools, and it begins to suck. This is the irreversible point for Part 3, the creation of the firestorm's engine. That rising fireball pulls air inward from all directions at ground level to feed itself. It's not a gentle breeze, it's a gale-force wind rushing back towards the center of destruction where the temperatures are still in the thousands of degrees. This is the start of the firestorm, and it's not like a forest fire or a building fire you've seen. A firestorm isn't something that spreads, it's a weather system. It forms. Think of it as a self-powered furnace. The rising column of superheated air creates a low-pressure zone at the surface, which pulls in more fresh, oxygen-rich air from the periphery. That fresh air feeds the existing fires, which burn hotter and faster, which strengthens the updraft, which pulls in more air. It's a feedback loop of pure combustion. Within minutes, this system can achieve winds at ground level stronger than a tornado. But instead of blowing in a circle, they blow relentlessly inward, toward the core. Here's a concrete failure example. Imagine a family in a suburb 3 or 4 miles from ground zero. Their house is damaged but standing. The windows are blown out, the roof is partly gone, but the walls are up. They survived the flash and the shockwave. They're in their basement, scared but alive. They think the worst is over. They smell smoke, but it's distant. They have their bug-out bags. Their plan is to wait an hour for things to settle, then drive to their cabin in the woods. Their plan is about to incinerate them, because that inward rushing wind is now hitting the periphery of the blast zone. It's hitting neighborhoods where thousands of small fires are already burning, curtains, cars, splintered wood from houses. The wind doesn't blow these fires out. It fans them. It carries burning embers ahead of it, starting new fires downwind of existing ones. So the fire front doesn't just creep, it leaps. Entire city blocks ignite almost simultaneously. The temperature outside that family's basement window is rising, fast, from ambient to 100 degrees Fahrenheit to 200 to 400. The oxygen in the air is being consumed by the colossal fire just a mile or two away. The wind is howling now, a constant roar, and it's pulling at their damaged house. They'll feel the draft coming down the basement stairs, a hot, smoky, relentless suction pulling air out of their shelter and towards the fire. This is the short, uncomfortable statement for this part. In a firestorm, shelters become ovens, and then they become fuel. Their wooden-framed house, even damaged, will pyrolyze. The heat slowly bakes the moisture out of the wood, releasing flammable gases. Eventually, the entire structure doesn't need a flame to touch it. It reaches its auto-ignition temperature and simply erupts from the inside out. The family in the basement will be baked alive or suffocated from oxygen deprivation long before the flames physically reach them. Their car in the garage is already a melted, useless hulk. Their escape route is a corridor of 1,000-degree air and hurricane-force winds filled with burning debris. By the 10-minute mark, the firestorm is mature. It has established its own perimeter. Inside that perimeter, everything that can burn is burning. The air is unbreathable, superheated, toxic with fumes from melted plastics, chemicals, and asphalt. The streets are rivers of molten asphalt. Emergency services? They no longer exist. The fire stations, the trucks, the firefighters, gone in the first minute. The water mains are severed. There is no force on Earth that can stop this fire until it runs out of fuel. And a modern city has a lot of fuel. If you live in a city and your plan is to shelter in place in a standard basement, you need to understand this calculus. You are betting your life that the thermal footprint and the firestorm perimeter will stop before they reach you. It's not a bet about preparedness. It's a bet about zip codes and wind direction. And while the city core is vaporizing, something else is happening in the areas that felt only the blast's outer edge, where the windows blew in but the buildings stand. That's where the first wave of real human movement begins, and that's where the next layer of disaster starts. Next, this gets worse because the survivors start to move, and they become the second wave of the disaster. In the outer rings where damage is only severe, where houses have their roofs torn off and every window is a wall of jagged glass, but the structures are still vaguely standing, people are starting to move. This is the irreversible point for Part 4. The moment collective panic becomes a physical force more dangerous than the radiation slowly drifting in the air. For the first 15-20 minutes, there was a stunned silence. The shockwave of the event created a psychological shockwave too. People are bleeding from glass cuts, eardrums are ruptured, they're in a state of utter disbelief. But then the adrenaline wins. The human instinct to do something, to find someone, kicks in. And that's when the second disaster begins. Here's a concrete failure example. A man in a suburban house. His wife was at work closer to the city. His kids are at school. The phones are dead. The power is out. His car is buried under part of his neighbor's roof, but it's probably wrecked anyway from the electromagnetic pulse that fried every unshielded circuit right before the blast. His plan was to reunite at home. That plan is now a death sentence. He leaves his house on foot. His goal is the elementary school, 2 miles away. He steps out into a world that no longer obeys any rules. The streets are littered with debris, power lines, trees, pieces of signage. It's not impassable, but it's chaotic. He's not the only one with this idea. You see other people now, emerging like ghosts from their houses, covered in plaster dust, moving with the dazed, single-minded focus of trauma. This is where most people die in the aftermath. Not from the initial blast, but from the 1,000 cuts of the collapsed environment. The first threat is simple: blood loss. That man might have a deep cut on his leg from the glass. He didn't feel it in the shock. He's running on adrenaline. He's walking on it. In 30 minutes, he'll be weak. In an hour, he'll be disoriented. He'll sit down against a wall and not get up. There are no ambulances coming. There are no bandages except what you have on you. A minor injury in this new world is a fatal one. The second threat is the environment itself. That man walks past a house that looks intact, but the gas line to it is fractured. The basement is filling with an odorless, invisible cloud. A spark from a dangling power line, a piece of metal scraping concrete, or just the built-up concentration, and the house explodes. Not with nuclear force, but with enough force to kill everyone within 50 feet. He's walking through a minefield of modern infrastructure failures. But the third, and most immediate threat, is other people. This isn't movie madness with roving gangs. It's quieter, more desperate, and faster. He rounds a corner and sees a crowd around a shattered gas station convenience store. People are grabbing bottles of water, food. It's not looting yet. It's survival. But the clerk is there, waving a tire iron, screaming. Someone pushes. Someone else falls. The man with the tire iron swings. Now there's a fight. It spreads in seconds. It's over a case of warm soda. In 5 minutes, 2 people are dead on the ground, beaten or stabbed with improvised weapons. The man backs away, his mission to find his kids now competing with a new, primal understanding. Public order was a thin layer, and it's gone. It evaporated in the flash. If you think you're neutral, that you can just move through this quietly on your own business, you're wrong. You are now either a resource, an obstacle, or a threat in the eyes of every other person you meet. Your backpack makes you a target. Your lack of a weapon makes you a victim. Your possession of a weapon makes you a combatant. There is no neutral. And all of this is happening while the first invisible killer is settling over everything. Fallout. The giant radioactive mushroom cloud has now reached its peak and is starting to disperse. The wind at high altitude is carrying a plume of the most finely pulverized, intensely radioactive debris, dirt, building materials, vaporized weapons components, downwind. It's beginning to fall out of the sky like a fine, deadly sand. It's silent. You can't see it in the thick dust already in the air. You might feel a gritty texture or see it collecting on windowsills later. But with every breath you take outside, you are drawing radioactive particles deep into your lungs, where they will irradiate you from the inside out for the rest of your life, which may now be measured in weeks. The man walking to the school is breathing it in. The people fighting over soda are breathing it in. They are all making a choice, without knowing it. Immediate reunion versus slow, agonizing death. And most will choose the reunion. By the 1-hour mark, the exodus from the outer rings towards the destroyed center, where loved ones were, where work was, is in full tragic swing. They are walking into the heart of the firestorm's radiant heat, into zones of total destruction, into a dust cloud saturated with fallout. They are walking to their graves, driven by a love that the attack counted on. Meanwhile, on the highways leading out of the city, a different kind of gridlock is forming. Not the kind you can sit in, the kind that dies in place. Next, this gets worse because the escape routes seal themselves shut, turning into tombs of steel and glass. The highways are sealed, not by police barricades or military checkpoints. They are sealed by physics, panic, and simple geometry. This is the irreversible point for Part 5, the moment the city becomes a sealed trap. Let's follow a different ordinary person. She was at work on the far edge of the city, in an office park. She felt the shockwave, saw the flash in the distance. Her building is damaged, but okay. Following the old, deep-seated instinct of, get out of the city, she gets in her car. The engine starts. Maybe it was in a garage, shielded from the worst of the EMP. She joins a stream of other vehicles, all heading for the same major artery out of town, State Route 10. This is the concrete failure. She believes the road is an escape route. It is not. It is a funnel. For the first few miles, it's slow but moving. Then she reaches the first overpass. It's collapsed. Not from a direct hit, but from the shockwave stressing its structure. The road is blocked by a mountain of concrete and rebar. The traffic in front of her stops. The traffic behind her keeps coming. Now, all lanes are full. She's stuck. People start getting out of their cars. They're going to try to move the rubble by hand. It's futile. The crowd grows. Arguments break out over who should back up to let others turn around. No one can back up. The press of vehicles behind is now a solid, unmoving mass stretching back for miles. The horns have stopped. There's just the sound of idling engines, shouting, and the distant, constant roar of the firestorm. This is where the resources in your car become your coffin. You have half a tank of gas. The person next to you is nearly empty. In an hour, their car dies, blocking the slim chance of someone maneuvering around. Then another car dies, and another. The highway becomes a linear junkyard of immobilized metal. Now the threats multiply. First, heat. If it's day, the sun is beating down. With the air conditioning off to save gas, the interior of the car becomes an oven. You have to open the windows. But outside, the air is thick with pulverized concrete dust. And though you don't know it yet, fallout. You're breathing it. Your children in the back seat are breathing it. Second, dehydration. You have a bottle of water in your cup holder. That's it. You are looking at a minimum of 24 hours in this metal box, in escalating heat, under massive physical stress. That bottle is gone in the first hour. By hour 3, thirst is a claw in your throat. By hour 6, you're seriously impaired. You look at the ditch beside the highway. It's dry. There is no water. Third, the human factor. A few cars over, a family has a case of water in their trunk. Someone sees it. A negotiation happens. It turns into a demand, then a fight. It's not a zombie horde. It's a desperate father fighting another desperate father over plastic bottles. It happens in stifling heat, in silence except for grunts and cries. It ends with one man on the ground, bleeding. The family with the water now has a target on their car. Word spreads in whispers. That vehicle is now a fortress under siege, and its guardians will not sleep. If your plan depends on authorities coming to clear the road and restore order, look at your clock. It's been 90 minutes, no police, no National Guard, no helicopters. The institutions that manage these things are gone. Their headquarters were in the city center. Their communication networks are fried. Their personnel are dead, or they are trying to find their own families. You are on your own, on a road that goes nowhere, surrounded by thousands of people in the exact same deteriorating condition. And then, the fires reach the highway. The firestorm's periphery is expanding, driven by the wind. Or perhaps a gas station a quarter-mile away, its tanks compromised, finally explodes. The fire jumps into the dry grass of the highway median. It finds fuel in the plastic trim of the abandoned cars. It begins to move down the line of vehicles. This is the short, uncomfortable statement. On a gridlocked highway, your car is not a shelter. It is a crematorium. The choice, forced upon you without anyone asking, is this. Do you stay in your metal box and risk being cooked alive? Or do you abandon your only hard shelter and your supplies to flee on foot into the unknown, irradiated landscape, with no water, no destination, and every other person from the highway now doing the same? Our office worker chooses to flee. She grabs her purse, leaves her car, and climbs over the median barrier. She joins a disorganized river of people now walking across the fields beside the highway. They are all leaving their resources behind. They are now refugees in their own country, with nothing, heading towards small towns that lack the infrastructure, the water, or the will to handle 10,000 sudden, desperate guests. Back in the neighborhoods, the man trying to reach the school is now lost. The streets are unrecognizable under debris and dust. The school, when he finds it, is a collapsed ruin of brick and steel. There is no one to help him dig, no one in charge. He is just one more man screaming a name into the wind. By the 3-hour mark, the social organism of the city is dead. What moves now is not a community, but a population of traumatized individuals, reacting, consuming the last of the available resources in a widening circle of chaos. And above it all, the fallout continues to drift down, settling on everything, measured not in hours of danger, but in days and weeks. Next, this gets worse because the invisible killer starts its real work, and the tools you thought would save you become useless. The invisible killer is no longer just in the air. It's on everything. The gritty dust on your skin, in your hair, on your clothes, that's not just dirt. That's fallout. And this is the irreversible point for Part 6. The moment radiation sickness becomes unavoidable for anyone who stayed outside. Let's be clear. This isn't a gentle glow or a tingling sensation. Radiation is a silent bullet. It's shooting through your body right now, damaging cells at a microscopic level. The damage is cumulative and irrevocable. You don't feel it happening. You only feel the consequences, hours later, when it's far too late. Think of the office worker who abandoned her car. She's been walking for 2 hours across fields and through suburban backyards. She's sweating. The dust, the fallout, has mixed with her sweat and caked on her skin. She's breathing heavily, drawing particles deep into her lungs with every breath. Every time she touches her face, she's moving contamination to her mouth. She's already receiving a lethal dose. She just doesn't know it. Here's the concrete failure example involving an ordinary person. the prepper in his basement. He heard the blast, felt the house shake. He immediately went to his reinforced basement shelter. He has food, water, a Geiger counter, and a chemical toilet. He thinks he's won. He waits the recommended 24 to 48 hours before even thinking of going outside. His plan is textbook. His failure is in the first 5 minutes after the blast. His house lost its windows. The overpressure wave filled his home with contaminated dust before he even made it to the basement door. That dust is now inside his sealed shelter. It's on the floor he walked on. It's on his clothes. It's in the ventilation shafts of his house that he didn't have time to seal. When he finally checks his Geiger counter, the reading is terrifying, and it's reading the contamination inside his shelter. He has been breathing it for a day. His clean water is in plastic jugs, but the fallout dust is on the jugs. Every time he touches one and then touches his food, he's ingesting it. His shelter has become a slow-release poison chamber. This dismantles the comforting illusion of the safe room. Unless you were in a purpose-built sealed bunker with an independent air supply before the detonation, and you never opened the door, you are contaminated. Period. The idea that you can just run to your basement after the fact and be safe is a fantasy. The fallout is too fine, too pervasive. It gets everywhere. The symptoms start to manifest around the 4 to 6 hour mark for those with the highest exposure, the people who are outside, walking. It begins with nausea, not just queasiness, but violent, uncontrollable vomiting. Then comes diarrhea. This is acute radiation syndrome kicking in. The body's fastest dividing cells, the lining of your gut, your bone marrow, are dying. You are, from the inside out, losing your ability to process nutrients or fight infection. If you live in a city and your plan is to bug out on foot after the fact, you need to understand this equation. The speed required to outrun the fallout plume is greater than the speed you can travel on foot across a ruined landscape. You will lose. The radiation will win. Your journey will end with you vomiting in a ditch, weak, dehydrated, and utterly helpless as your intestines begin to slough. And this is where the tools fail. That Geiger counter? It's useful for telling you you're doomed. It can't save you. Potassium iodide pills? They only protect your thyroid from one specific radioactive isotope, iodine-131. They do nothing against the cesium-137, strontium-90, and the dozens of other lethal isotopes coating you. They don't heal your bone marrow. They don't stop the internal bleeding. By the 6 hour mark, the first wave of true helplessness descends. The walking wounded from the initial blast, people with broken limbs, lacerations, burns, are now developing infections. There are no antibiotics. The pharmacies were looted in the first 2 hours, and the pills were grabbed at random by people in shock. A simple broken bone, if it broke the skin, is now a death sentence. Sepsis will set in within a day. The man who was looking for his kids at the school, he cut his leg on rebar. He's now sitting against a wall, vomiting bile, his leg swollen and hot to the touch. The radiation is destroying his immune system at the same time the infection is raging. He will be dead in 36 hours, and his last conscious thoughts will be of his children, whose fate he will never know. The city is now a landscape of 3 groups: the dead, the dying, and the temporarily surviving. The third group is now faced with the grim arithmetic of triage, without medicine, without hope, and with the slow, sure knowledge that the poison inside them is ticking down. Next, this gets worse because the night falls, and the temperature does something you haven't planned for. Night falls. And this is the irreversible point for Part 7. The moment environmental control vanishes forever. The temperature doesn't just drop, it plummets. And it does so in a world where every source of heat is either radioactive, inaccessible, or a death sentence. Think about what's gone. The power grid is dead. Natural gas lines are ruptured and shut off or burning uncontrolled. Your home's furnace is a silent, useless box. If your house is still standing, its windows are gone. Its insulation is compromised. It's not a shelter anymore. It's a drafty concrete shell that will now equalize with the outside temperature. Fast. Here's a concrete failure example. A family managed to survive together. They're in their damaged home. They have some food, some water. They've sealed one interior room with duct tape and plastic sheeting, trying to keep out fallout. They think they've made it through the worst. As dusk approaches, the father lights a candle for light and a small, camping-style propane heater for warmth. It feels like a win, a moment of normalcy. This will kill them. First, the heat. That small heater is burning oxygen in their poorly sealed small room. Within an hour, the oxygen level drops. They'll feel headaches, drowsiness. They'll think they're just tired. They'll fall asleep. Carbon monoxide from the imperfect combustion will finish the job. They will not wake up. Second, the light. That single candle in the window of a dark, dead city is a beacon. For miles around, anyone else surviving will see it. It signals one thing: resources. A working house, warmth, food. That light will draw visitors. And in the first night, visitors are not neighbors coming to help. They are desperate, cold, armed people who have nothing to lose. The family has now painted a target on their only shelter. If you think you're neutral, sitting in your dark house, you are not. You are either a stockpile or a vacant lot. There is no in-between. Let's step outside. The temperature drop is dramatic. Without the urban heat island effect, the stored warmth from asphalt and concrete, and with dust and smoke blocking the sun all day, the temperature crashes. It might be a pleasant 60-degree afternoon, but by midnight, it's 35 degrees. For those trapped on the highway in their cars or wandering the fields, this is hypothermia weather. They are dehydrated, stressed, and likely injured. Their bodies can't regulate. The office worker who fled her car is now shivering violently in a grove of trees. She's in a light blouse and slacks. The sweat from her day-long walk has now chilled on her skin. The shaking is uncontrollable. It burns the last of her caloric energy. Her thinking becomes fuzzy, slow. She'll make poor decisions, maybe try to approach a darkened house she sees, not knowing who's inside. Or she'll lie down, just to rest for a moment. She will not get up. Water becomes a new enemy. Any open source of water, a swimming pool, a pond, a ruptured water main flooding the street, is coated with fallout. Drinking it is suicidal, but the cold dehydrates you further. The thirst is maddening. People will drink anyway. They will choose a slow, radioactive death over the immediate torment of thirst. This is where most group dynamics fracture completely. Up until now, small groups might have stuck together. Families, co-workers. But as the cold sets in and resources prove to be zero, loyalty fractures. That bottle of water becomes more important than your friend. That single blanket means more than your sibling's comfort. You will not recognize these thoughts as they form. They will just seem logical, necessary. And through the cold, dark night, the sounds change. The roar of the firestorm might have diminished, replaced by the crackle of isolated fires. But the human sounds are worse. The cries for help have mostly stopped. They've been replaced by the sounds of movement, furtive, scraping sounds of people searching through rubble. Occasional shouts that turn into short, sharp conflicts. A single gunshot echoes for miles in the silent city. Then nothing. By the 12-hour mark, civilization is not degraded. It is erased. The remaining people are operating on a blend of trauma instinct and primal calculus. The concepts of tomorrow and next week are gone. Only now and the next hour exist. And the body count, which stopped being measurable hours ago, is now quietly multiplied by exposure and despair. But the body itself is about to introduce a new, ancient problem, one that no one in the first 24 hours has the capacity to solve. Next, this gets worse because the dead stop being people and start being an environmental hazard. The dead are no longer just casualties. They are a logistical, biological, and psychological problem that the living have zero capacity to handle. This is the irreversible point for Part 8, the moment the scale of death exceeds the possibility of burial or ritual, turning the city into a mass grave and a breeding ground for pestilence. Let's be honest. In the first 12 hours, bodies were just there, part of the landscape, a fact to step around. But by the 18-hour mark, biological processes are advancing. In the summer heat, or even in the cool night, decomposition begins. Flies, which seem to materialize from nowhere, find them. The smell starts. It's not just a bad smell. It's a thick, sweet, cloying stench that hangs in the dust-choked air. It gets into your clothes, your hair, the back of your throat. You can taste it. It triggers gagging. For survivors already nauseous from radiation sickness or stress, it's unbearable. It forces you to move, but everywhere you move, there are more. Here's a concrete failure example. A small group of survivors has taken refuge in a mostly intact big box store on the city's edge. They fought off other groups to secure it. They have bottled water, canned food, shelter from the elements. They think they've secured a fortress, but the store's parking lot is strewn with dozens of bodies. People who died in the initial panic, or from injuries, or were caught in fights. The group's leader makes a logical decision. We need to clear them. For hygiene, for morale. They start dragging bodies away from the entrance. It's backbreaking, horrific work. The bodies are heavy, limp, often mangled. In the process, they are exposed to massive amounts of blood and bodily fluids. They have no gloves, no protective gear. They have cuts and blisters on their hands from the day's chaos. They are now exposing themselves to hepatitis, HIV, tetanus, and a host of other blood-borne and bacterial pathogens. Their immune systems are already compromised by stress, poor nutrition, and likely low-level radiation exposure. An infection that would have been a minor nuisance with antibiotics is now a death sentence. And they haven't solved the problem. They've just moved it 100 feet away. They cannot dig dozens of graves. The ground is hard, they have no tools, and the physical exertion would drain their precious calories and water. So the bodies lie in a heap, a new pile of carrion. This pile will attract rats. It will attract dogs that have gone feral. It will become a nexus of disease. If your plan depends on securing a location and holding it, you must now add mortician and waste disposal manager to your list of skills. And you must do it without getting sick yourself. It is a mathematically impossible task for a small group. Meanwhile, the water problem becomes catastrophic. The sewer systems are broken. What little water people are using to try to clean wounds or themselves, scavenged bottled water mostly, becomes contaminated waste. It pools. It mixes with human waste from overwhelmed toilets or from people who are just too sick to move. Flies move from the corpses to these pools and back again. We are now witnessing the prelude to a cholera outbreak, to dysentery, to typhoid. These diseases killed more soldiers than bullets in every war up until the 20th century. They are about to make a comeback in the heart of a modern city. And there are no doctors, no rehydration salts, no clean beds. Psychologically, this environment breaks something fundamental. The dead are not respectfully departed. They are rotting obstacles. The survivors, to continue, must become numb to it. They must step over the body of a child to get to a can of food. They must ignore the pleas of a dying stranger because stopping would mean exposure, or wasting water, or missing a chance to scavenge. This numbness is a survival trait in the moment, but it sears the soul. Anyone who makes it out of this will carry this switched-off part of themselves forever. And for those alone, like our office worker shivering in the cold, the loneliness becomes a physical weight. The silence is punctuated not by human voices, but by the sounds of animals, dogs fighting over something in the dark, the flutter of wings. The world has become alien. The familiar landmarks are gone, replaced by a hellscape that smells of death and smoke. The urge to just give up, to lie down next to the others, becomes a powerful, seductive logic. By the 20-hour mark, the city is no longer a place of tragedy. It is a biological hazard zone. The initial kinetic violence of the blast and fire has been replaced by the slow, grinding violence of decay and disease. The radiation is working inside people. The infections are working on their wounds, and the environment itself is turning septic. But there is one final silent shift occurring, a shift in authority. The last vestiges of official response are about to arrive, and they will not be what anyone hopes for. Next, this gets worse because the first external faces you see will not be rescuers. They will be occupiers. The first organized vehicles you see will not be ambulances or Red Cross trucks. They will be military, and they will not be there for you. This is the irreversible point for Part 9. The moment the outside world intervenes, not to save, but to contain. Think about the view from a satellite or a high-altitude aircraft. The city is a smoking scar. Around it, for dozens of miles, the highway gridlock we described is a frozen metallic river. Smaller towns are flooded with refugees. The problem is no longer just one city, it's regional chaos. The national response isn't about rescue, it's about stabilization, and you are now a variable in that equation, not a citizen to be saved. You might hear them before you see them, the deep-throated rumble of diesel engines, the whump-whump of heavy-lift helicopters flying high overhead, not landing. Then, the vehicles appear. Armored Humvees, maybe light tanks. They don't drive down your littered street. They establish a perimeter around the worst-affected zones, miles out. They are not wearing medical insignia. They are wearing MOPP gear, full chemical, biological, radioactive protective suits with masks. They look like astronauts from a hostile planet. Their orders are simple, and you are not in them. Prevent outflow, assess damage, secure key infrastructure if possible. They are not here to dig you out. They are here to make sure what happened in the city stays in the city. Here's a concrete failure example. A group of survivors, maybe 10 people, has been sheltering in a church basement. They see a National Guard convoy rolling slowly down the major road 2 blocks over. Hope surges. They run out, waving, shouting. They approach the vehicles. They are met with raised rifles. A voice, distorted by a mask, booms from a loudspeaker. "Stop! Do not approach! You are contaminated! Return to shelter!" The group is confused. They plead. They show their injuries. A soldier, his face obscured by the thick mask's lens, shifts his grip on his weapon. The message is clear. Advance, and you will be shot. Not out of malice, out of protocol. Their mission is to avoid contact with highly radioactive individuals to preserve their own unit's operational ability. You are a walking biohazard. Your need is irrelevant to the mission. If your plan depends on authorities arriving to restore order and provide aid, you have misunderstood what order means now. Order means a sterile, controlled perimeter. Aid, for the immediate future, means a pallet of water and MREs dropped by drone at the perimeter's edge, if you're lucky. It does not mean doctors. It does not mean evacuation. The math of disaster response is brutal. You cannot save the contaminated without losing the clean. The city and everyone in it is now triaged as expectant, the medical term for those beyond help. The soldiers at the perimeter have their own problems. Their Geiger counters are screaming. Their commanders are deciding if this perimeter is even tenable or if they need to pull back further. They are watching for secondary attacks. They are dealing with panicked armed refugees trying to break out of the containment zone. Their rules of engagement are strict. Use lethal force to maintain the cordon. Meanwhile, the information blackout is total. There is no radio broadcast telling you what's happening. The soldier with the loudspeaker isn't giving updates. You are in an information vacuum. Rumors become truth. They're going to firebomb the city to stop disease. They're letting everyone inside die. This was just the first strike. More are coming. Paranoia, the final psychological toxin, sets in. For the survivors still capable of movement, this presents the final, terrible choice. Do you stay inside the perimeter, in the ruined, septic, radioactive city, scrounging for dwindling scraps, waiting for help that will not come? Or do you try to break through the military cordon, risking being shot, to get into the countryside where you have no shelter, no resources, and will be viewed as a radioactive plague carrier by any rural community you find? This is the short, uncomfortable statement. After a nuclear strike, rescue is a myth. Containment is the policy. The office worker, if she is still alive, is now a ghost wandering between the containment lines and the inner ruin. The family that lit the candle has been discovered, their resources taken, their shelter occupied by a more ruthless group. The prepper in his basement is watching his Geiger counter's needle hover in the lethal zone, realizing his fortress is his tomb. By the 23-hour mark, a new normal has solidified. It is a hierarchy of despair. At the top, the few well-armed, ruthless groups controlling the last pockets of resources. Below them, the scavengers and the prey. Below them, the sick and dying. And at the perimeter, a wall of silent, faceless soldiers ensuring the problem does not spread. The first 24 hours are almost up. The acute phase is ending. What begins now is the long, slow descent. But there is one conclusion to draw from all of this. One dominant, practical truth that condenses every stage we've walked through. Next, This ends not with a bang, but with a single, quiet statement of fact. The dominant concluding statement is this: in the first 24 hours after a nuclear strike on a normal city, everyone dies. It just happens at different speeds. Some die in the first second, vaporized. Some die in the first minute, crushed or pulverized. Some die in the first hour, burned or trampled. Some die in the first 6 hours, bleeding out from forgotten cuts. Some die on the first night, from the cold or from a stranger's desperate choice. Some die in the first week, from radiation sickness, from cholera, from an infected scratch. But the trajectory for everyone inside the footprint is set, irreversibly, in that first day. The city is not a place you survive. It is a place you exit, or you perish. The irreversible point of Part 10 and of this entire script is the acceptance of this scale. Your personal preparedness, your cleverness, your will to live. These are factors only at the very margins. They might shift you from one category of death to a slightly slower one. They will not change the categories. The event is too big. The physics are too absolute. The systems you depend on are too fragile, and they fail in a cascade that no individual can outrun or outsmart. We walked through the 10 stages: the silent flash, the shockwave's push-pull, the firestorm's formation, the panic movement, the highway gridlock, the invisible contamination, the killing cold, the mountain of the dead, the containment perimeter. Each stage logically triggered the next. Each stage eliminated a path back to normal. The city didn't just get damaged, it was dismantled, layer by layer, from physical infrastructure to social contract to biological viability. If you take one thing from this, let it be this: the only meaningful variable is location at the moment of detonation. Everything else is commentary. Your plan is not a plan if it begins after the flash. Any plan that starts with "when the sirens go off" or "once I get to my basement" is a plan for a different, gentler disaster. This is not that. So, what is this for? Why walk through it? It's not to sell you gear. It's not to frighten you into paralysis. It's to dismantle the comforting cinematic fantasy of weathering the unweatherable. It's to replace that fantasy with a cold, operational understanding. This understanding is the only form of respect we can pay to the reality of the event. Sentimentality, hope, and heroism are materials that the first 24 hours burn for fuel. The quiet, direct appeal to you, the viewer, is this: let this knowledge frame your calculation of real-world risks. Let it guide your assessment of geopolitical tensions not as abstract news, but as the sole determinant of that one variable that matters: your location on that one day. Your politics, your opinions, your outrage, they are irrelevant in the face of the flash. Only your geography matters. This is not a call to despair. It is a call to clarity. See the world as it is, not as the stories tell you it is. In the face of certain things, there is no survival. There is only avoidance. Let your efforts and your fears flow toward the avoidable, not the survivable. The script for the first 24 hours is written in physics, human nature, and scale. It has one ending. Your only job is to not be a character in it.